The sleeping car and the collector. The night train, as if forgotten in the timetable, crawled along an old, long-neglected line. Outside the windows, it was so dark it seemed the train wasn't moving through the countryside at all, but along the very edge of the world, where primal emptiness swirled beyond the glass. The soft lamps in the corridor barely illuminated the walls of the sleeper car, their light trembling as if afraid of its own glow. The passenger, a middle-aged man, exhausted from endless business trips, was traveling in a single-occupancy compartment. He went to bed late. A long phone call, an attempt to read a few pages of a book, then restless tossing. The train was quiet, but not the comforting kind of quiet. More like the uncomfortable silence that makes you feel as though someone is listening. He fell asleep only near morning, when the rhythm of the wheels blended into a monotone stream, like rain tapping on a roof. He woke abruptly, as if someone had whispered directly into his ear. His eyes snapped open, and the first thing he sensed was a presence. Not a sound, not a movement, just that sticky, unmistakable feeling that something was standing in the darkness, watching him, staring so intently that the skin on his neck prickled. He slowly pushed himself up and listened. The train had stopped. He couldn't explain how he knew, but he was certain. The wheels were silent, no clatter at the joints, no groaning metal, only taut silence, like the world had held its breath. "What the?" he muttered, but his voice sounded too loud. There, in the corridor, stood a figure. At first, it looked like just a shadow, dark, elongated, unnaturally still. But gradually, his eyes made out details. A tall, thin silhouette in a long, battered coat. The coat was covered in pockets and pouches. Metal trinkets hung from straps. On his back was an enormous pack, looking as if it had been stitched together from objects found on deserted graveyards. In its tangle of straps and cords were cages, bones, bundles, and old papers, and lanterns. Several lanterns, green and dim, hanging at the sides of that monstrous pack, though none were yet lit. The figure's face was whiter than chalk, lips barely visible, and the eyes two yellow, smoldering embers. Not reflections, not a glow cast by lamps. Actual fire, quiet and persistent. The collector. The man didn't know this name, but it surfaced in his mind on its own, like a long-forgotten warning dredged from a dream. He blinked, and everything froze. The lamp above the door hung still, its flickering paused mid-movement. The fabric of the curtain no longer swayed, though a moment before a faint current of air had stirred it. Even the shadows under the small table hardened into unmoving shapes. The collector had moved closer, exactly one step. No transition, no shifting of limbs. He was simply nearer, as if the frames between moments had vanished. The man jerked back in fright, his heartbeat pounding like it wanted to escape his chest. Hey, who are you?" he asked, feeling his throat tighten. The collector tilted his head, slowly, lightly, as though examining a curious specimen. His posture radiated a predator's interest, not anger. Anger requires emotion, and he seemed to have none. The passenger squeezed his eyes shut, harder than intended, as if he could push the absurdity out of existence. Click. That's what it felt like. As if the world had switched to the next phase. Now the collector stood at the compartment door. One more step, and he would be inside. The passenger breathed in rapid, uneven bursts. He wanted to stand, but his legs felt numb. He wanted to call the conductor, but the carriage seemed deserted. No footsteps, no murmurs, no creak of doors. Only him and the figure with burning yellow eyes. He ran a shaking hand down his face and blinked again. Click. The collector was inside the compartment. His tall silhouette filled the narrow space. His face, now so close, revealed thin, crack-like lines around the eyes. On his chest hung a tiny skull, perfectly clean, as if freshly polished. The lanterns on his pack began to stir. Faint lights pulsed within them like dying coals. Quiet. Voices. Whispers. At first, the man thought it was just rustling, barely perceptible. But the longer he listened, the more clearly he understood they were words. Words in different languages. Words spoken long ago by living people. And among them, he heard his own voice. No. Please. The man recoiled in terror, hitting the compartment wall. No, this is impossible. This is a nightmare. A dream. The collector lifted one of the lanterns. Its glass was clouded, as if covered with ancient dust, but inside churned a greenish light cold, otherworldly. In that glow, faint shapes flickered, faces twisted in fear, mouths frozen in silent screams, eyes dim and fading, the sound of fear, the echoes of people he had once observed the same way. The collector slowly brought the lantern to the man's face. The light flared, and the man heard his own breath, broken, stuttering, heard himself begging, heard a scream he had not yet uttered, but which the lantern had already captured. The collector smiled. The smile was wrong, far too wide, as though the jaw could move further than human anatomy should allow. The man paled. His eyelids grew heavy. He didn't want them to close. He fought to keep his eyes open, but blinking is a reflex older than willpower. And he blinked one last time. Click. The sound boomed, though perhaps only he heard it, or whatever was left of him. The lantern flared bright, very bright, then gradually dimmed. Inside, the new light settled into a steady green glow, like a freshly caught soul of fear. The whisper of a new voice joined the choir of others. And the man's body was gone. Not evaporated, not dissolved, simply ceased to exist, the way a thought vanishes when torn out of memory. The collector placed the lantern back, securing the new trophy among his eternal collection. The car shuddered. The train began moving again, as if nothing had happened. The lamps buzzed softly once more. Curtains swayed gently in the returning airflow. Someone in a neighboring compartment turned over in their sleep, unaware that in the night, someone had walked through the car collecting fears. The collector slowly turned toward the exit. His pack jingled faintly, lanterns swaying and casting green shadows along the walls. He walked on softly, silently, like smoke in a tunnel, for there was still a long train ahead and many more passengers, and his collection is never complete.